My name is Molly. I am from the Emplifi marketing team. So just hopping on quickly to welcome you to our first of our three-part webinar series around mastering social media maturity. I will be handing it over to Susan Ganation, who is the CMO at Emplifi, and she will cover what we're going to go over today, as well as introduce our very exciting guest that we have today. So I'll be monitoring the chat along with a colleague of mine, Mike, in the background. If you need anything, please feel free to drop it in the chat. We'll also open up a poll and do some Q&A at the end, but any questions or anything, just drop them in the chat and we'll address them there. And Susan, over to you.
Great. Thanks, Molly. Thanks so much. I've been at Emplifi for about a year now. I'm really excited to say that. And one of the things I wanted to remind you all is that we are getting really prolific on all the content and data that we put out. So don't forget to spend a little time looking at our resources page off our newly launched website. It's kind of been a couple of phases, but you'll notice a new look and feel there if you haven't been there in a while. Emplifi.io or even .com will get you there. And check out some of our resources. But in the meantime, we are focused on mastering social media, in particular, looking at the social care aspect. And this is a three-part series. So we'll explore how brands are evolving in social care and in commerce and in marketing. We largely believe that these three things are at an intersection and better together. And we have an expert discussion today that will walk you through why we believe we're better together. Before we start, I wanted to do a quick poll, if Molly or Mike, you can help me pull that up. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being most integrated, 1 being least integrated, how integrated would you consider your social media marketing efforts with your customer care and support team? In other words, when someone complains on social media or provides product feedback that the customer care and support team might need to know, are you passing that data and that information over to that team so that they can address it for the consumer? Back to the resources I mentioned at the start of this, some recent resources we put out show, what consumers are expecting when they talk to you on social media. And we're going to cover a lot of that today with our speakers. So consumers expect fast-paced, personalized responses. And you might wonder how you can deliver on that at scale. And so today I'd like to welcome Karen Carter from TUI, as well as Emmy DeMary from our Emplifi network. Emmy's been a longtime Emplifi champion, as well as a champion of many of our customers and helping them see success with our products and their overall social media marketing, commerce, and care efforts. So it's with great pleasure that I introduce you to both Karen and Emmy. So without further ado, over to you, Emmy. Please take it away.
Thank you, Molly / Susan, for the wonderful introduction there. I'm thrilled to be here, not only with Emplifi again, but also with Karen. Why don't we just start with some very quick introductions? Karen, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, about TUI and what you do there?
Yeah, of course. And nice to see you again, Emmy. So I am Senior Social Marketing Manager at TUI. I've been at TUI for just over 3 years, and my role involves standing over all of our social media operations. So that covers off kind of organic social, paid social, partnership activity, influencer activity, and also kind of liaising with our customer care team, looking after all of our kind of responding across social channels as well.
Wonderful, thank you. Well, we'll dive in a little bit about the scale and the complexity of what TUI is as a business. But why don't we just kick off with, I guess, something we've talked about a lot, which is the ever-changing landscape. And obviously that isn't just restricted to social by any stretch of the imagination. And what we found out, what Emplifi's found out in this recent Pulse survey they did a month or two ago, was that about just over a third, let's call it 35% of consumers, expect brands on social anyway to respond within an hour. And sometimes it's less, obviously, depending on the urgency. So I think as we all know, there's a lot of data alternative data suggesting that there are risks of not meeting consumers on their terms, but of course there's also opportunities and wins or victories, if you like. So again, the Pulse survey tells us that about a quarter of consumers will walk away from a brand, and I can speak that I've done that myself when you have a bad experience. But on the positive side, on the flip side, Bain & Co tells us that actually consumers will spend up to between 20 and 40% additional money when they have a really good experience. So look, this landscape's moving all the time, and I think the question for you, Karen, at TUI is how are you seeing these expectations evolve, particularly in the kind of realms of sort of social care?
Yeah, I mean, we absolutely see customers' expectations having grown a lot over the last few years. I think really kind of social contact volumes really exploded for us sort of over the pandemic. Obviously, people couldn't go on holiday. They were quite rightly wondering what was going on with their holiday, and we really saw a huge kind of growth in volumes over that period. And I think since then, the expectations have remained, and customers, they want to hear back from us instantly. They expect us to be covering all of the social media platforms. So yeah, I think expectations have very much grown, and I think all brands are having to kind of rise to that.
I agree, and I mean on the flip side from care. Certainly when it comes to kind of more commerce, and particularly with physical items like I don't know, fashion or whatever, consumers, particularly during the pandemic, have got so acclimatized, and since have got so acclimatized to the sense of immediacy of delivery. And it goes for the same for care. It's like, well, if my shirt can be delivered within a matter of hours, I want a response like ASAP. And obviously that throws a curveball to, I guess, a lot more kind of legacy brands. So I think obviously you witnessed, and yourself, this changes spurred on not just by the pandemic, but just, I guess, advances in technology and platforms. How has TUI evolved to kind of meet people where they are, where they want to be, and in their own time frames?
Yeah, well, we've really had to. I mean, over the pandemic, I would say we kind of managed to get through that, and then since that, we kind of learnt a lot of lessons from that. Now, we've set ourselves up to be able to respond to customers across any social media platform within 2 hours. So that's our SLA. So actually that stat of 35% of customers expect a response within 1 hour actually is quite surprising. And, perhaps we need to raise our game even more. But with the volumes of contact that we get, our SLA that we aim for is 2 hours to respond to customers. And in order to do that, we have agents online 24/7, 365 days a year, by introducing, kind of moving away from the traditional contact center where people kind of go there and work from there. By introducing this kind of like hybrid working across many of our agents, we're able to scale the number of agents who are working at any given time up or down relatively quickly. So, if we suddenly kind of notice an influx in contact volumes, we can be quite agile. And then the other thing I would say, how we've evolved our approach is in terms of tools. So we use Emplifi's community and care modules to identify, categorize, and respond to any kind of mentions and queries and comments. We use the community module to kind of reply to quite simple, straightforward comments, and then we assign more complex cases to care. And that's really allowed us to really stay on top of everything, make sure we're giving the most important cases the kind of the focus that they need, and make sure that we're giving our customers the best experience, really.
Yeah, wonderful. That's what they want. I mean, it is all about the experience, and obviously, the emotional kind of impact of a good holiday, the positive benefit it brings to everyone and their families, the volumes of water cooler moments it spurs. It's what we all talk about when we come back from a holiday, but equally we always share stories when it kind of goes wrong, right? So, and not just amongst your peers face to face or in the office or over a drink or something. Guess what? People talk about that on social as well. So I think just in continuing this theme of the kind of the changing, the evolving expectations. But let's just step back a bit, and just for the benefit of listeners who perhaps aren't familiar with TUI, perhaps if you're outside of Europe or wherever you are, Karen, can you just give the audience a little bit of a flavour of the scale of what TUI is? How many markets you operate in? What kind of sort of sub verticals, stroke brands do you have? And ultimately, how many customers do you take on holiday every year? I kind of know some of these numbers, but they're staggering.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we are quite a complex organization. We operate in several different markets globally. We've got a variety of different brands. So I think our main markets that we operate in, the UK is kind of one of the biggest markets. We've got a BENA market, which is Belgium and Netherlands. We have got a market in the Nordics, and several other kind of markets globally, taking customers to, I think the latest number is 83 different destinations worldwide, off on their holidays. So yeah, the scale of it is really pretty huge. And in terms of brands that sort of sit within TUI, under the TUI umbrella, that some people might not know, is First Choice is a kind of small brand that sits under TUI. We've got Marella Cruises, we've got Crystal Ski, and then we've got kind of some sort of sub products like TUI Lakes and Mountains, TUI Blue Hotels. So we really have got lots of different brands, lots of different markets, and as you can imagine, that creates this quite complex kind of customer ecosystem. Lots of different social media handles, and that will require sort of managing the contact through.
Yeah, great. I'm sure that's no picnic, but I know you do a good job, and I've actually been a TUI customer myself, particularly when my children are a bit younger. And I think with that, kind of bearing that in mind, you operate in so many different countries. Not only are you presented with multiple languages, but also I know from experience of working with other organizations that sometimes it's not like for like. If you see, for example, majority of customers in the UK coming to you via Facebook and Instagram, that might be wildly different in BeNe or in the Nordics or whatever. So I think, how do you, I guess, meet those challenges where it's not like for like across all those different markets? Because again, it's fundamentally different to a standalone brand in the UK, let's say like Boots the retailer, right? So you've got a different set of hurdles to straddle.
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting question. And, so we are set up, each market does have a kind of separate contact center team looking after its contacts. And there are definitely nuances kind of from between the different markets. But what we've been able to do since being on Emplifi, all of our different markets are on there. We've been able to really kind of centralize our conversations, but within that, they are still split out into the different markets, the different languages. Everybody's managing their own contact. But within that, we've been able to, I guess, really kind of share learnings, work to the same standardized processes to really kind of streamline things on a global scale.
Yeah, good. And I know when we first started speaking to TUI, a year or two ago, I remember you telling us that, from TUI's point of view, maintaining a strong NPS or becoming a loved brand in social was a very important piece. And do you feel you're maintaining an upward trajectory on that kind of particular area?
We do, yeah. It's still very important, kind of core KPI for us. And I think, the metrics that we use, obviously NPS we're tracking. We set ourselves quite stretching targets every year on NPS. And at the moment, we're really happy with where we're tracking against that target. We've made great progress over the last sort of few months and years against that by mainly like listening to what customers are saying about us, through our social listening, and using that to kind of address kind of core issues, so like root cause issues. So for example, if customers are telling us that they don't like the fact that there aren't reps in some resorts, we can read about that on social media, and then we can do something about it, and we can put more reps in resort. And as a consequence of some of these things that we've been able to find out and implement, we've managed to increase our NPS And then I think the other kind of metric that we look at there is sentiment within the listening module. And we have been able to reduce negative sentiment over the past few months and really boost positive sentiment.
Thank you very much, Karen. Those are great answers. Really interesting how you go about meeting people where they are, and so on, particularly in the kind of multiple markets and brands you work on. Now, I don't think as a technology business, Emplifi can have a kind of a meaningful presentation without mentioning AI in some shape or form. Today, I'm no expert. It's changing and evolving like everything else at ridiculously fast pace. And of course, I know many businesses are looking to adapt and evolve and adopt as quickly as possible where relevant. So again, just in this kind of this recent survey that Emplifi has done amongst 1,000 social media users, that's the Pulse survey. Just over 2/3, let's call it 67% of consumers still place a value and want human interactions. I find that quite interesting. So I think, we all know AI is one of the kind of main use cases, particularly kind of in a business like TUI. AI can, of course, take away a lot of the kind of human interaction. So I think, how is TUI deploying AI if at all, Karen, right now, to make sure people get answers that they want at the same time with maintaining what feels like a kind of personalized answer? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. And I think that's a really interesting stat as well. Like we talked about, customer expectations changing. They do want those quick responses, yet they don't necessarily want you to automate it. So it's, it's maintaining, having that speed, but maintaining the quality and the personalization. In general, as a business, I would say where we're adopting AI is in where it can make things quicker for us in terms of like summarizing, if people in their jobs have got a lot of information they have to digest. AI can be incredibly helpful in terms of summarizing things. I think where we possibly aren't in a place where we necessarily want to use AI would be in around kind of imagery and, generating imagery, that sort of thing, because we want to give customers, a real view of what their holiday is going to be like. In terms of sort of specifically in care, there are a few ways that we're using sort of AI and automation within our social care platform within Emplifi. So the first one is the AI reply assistant feature. Many of our agents are using that just to help them craft the responses that they're sending out to customers. So it's very much, it's not templated responses. It's not sending the response for them. They're saying what they want to say, but it's just helping them maybe make it a bit longer, a bit shorter, a bit more empathetic, whatever the sort of right tone is that they're trying to strike. So that would be the first one. The second one they're using is the summarize case AI feature. So that kind of allows you to quickly give a very sort of concise overview of the case. So for example, if they're passing a case from one agent to another, maybe having to pass it on to a specialized agent, that can really help in kind of making that process a bit quicker. It reduces average handling time and helps us to maintain that 2-hour response SLA. And then I think the final one is around kind of managing spikes in customer contact. So for example, if we're running, say, a competition or engagement activity on our social channels, we're able to kind of label up that post as a competition, for example, with a specific hashtag or a keyword. And then that label will automatically propagate all of the comments underneath it. So they can then kind of be put into a bucket, so to speak, to say sort of done or competition. And then that makes sure that they don't go into the care module and they don't clog up the contact that the care team are focusing on. So yeah, sort of several ways that automation and AI are helping us currently.
The last question I have is, when is it that TUI determines that actually a human is absolutely essential? And I can imagine a couple of scenarios. Tell us when is it that actually someone has to really jump on this and take care of the case?
Yeah, I think it would always be if there's a situation that is kind of quite delicate, or if there's a crisis unfolding, that in those cases there would always be a human taking charge. More often than not, it would be one of the social media team or the PR team, or kind of in conjunction liaising with each other about how do we approach this situation, how do we make sure we're being sensitive, how do we make sure we get back to the customer, let them know that it's that this is like very important to us and that we're looking into it for them. So I would say things like that, absolutely. And I think also, no matter how many of these AI features that we use, we'll always have an agent, a human looking over it, tweaking it, personalizing it, making sure it's really relevant to the customer that they're going back to.
Yeah, good. That's quite right. That's kind of, again, someone who's doesn't live in a city right now. I live in the country, and I do use a number of different websites to buy things. And actually, I do interact with care teams almost exclusively digitally and almost exclusively socially as well. So it's good to know. I think what you're doing is really executing best practice. Just last couple of questions. Thank you, Karen. Everything you've been saying has been really valuable for all of us. I think the audience will be really, really appreciative. The idea of, obviously there's been channels have been launched. Channels have, obviously X has by no means been deprecated, but obviously you could argue that it's less of a thing that perhaps it used to be. You touched on this earlier about, how conversations are kind of rooted a little bit internally within TUI, but how do you make sure that if I'm in France and I'm exclusively using Facebook, and you, Karen, in the UK, and using perhaps Instagram, how do you make sure that we're all getting the kind of that consistency across all channels?
Yeah, it's a very difficult thing to achieve. I think, what we do is, with our posting of our content that we're putting out there, I think what we try to do is I guess tailor it so that it's kind of bespoke to each platform. But, recognizing that customers are going across several platforms and they are interacting with us on several platforms. I think what's been really great over the last sort of few months to a year, what we've been able to do with using Emplifi, we've been able to get that kind of one central view of the customer. So before that, we really were managing our contact quite separately. So, Susan, for want of a better name, would contact us on Twitter, and Susan would contact us on Facebook, and we couldn't marry it up. We didn't know it was the same customer. So now we've got one central view of the customer, and we're able to recognize that this is the same person that's contacting us on Instagram about an issue that is then followed up on X, or has followed up on Facebook. And what we're able to do is kind of auto-assign care cases based on the inquiry type and agent availability. And what we can do, more often than not, we try to maintain one single point of contact for the customer. So because we can identify, that's the same customer that we spoke to earlier, but just on a different platform, we'll assign the agent that was dealing with it before. And that just kind of improves the customer experience, gives us a kind of closed loop management. But it also benefits our agents, because it gives them better job satisfaction, because it allows them to complete that whole interaction end to end.
Yeah, fantastic. I wish every organization did what you do. It sounds like a dream. And I think I touched on earlier a little bit about how there are opportunities for brands who get it right. Customers will either fuel loyalty, you'll fuel NPS, you'll fuel sentiment, positive sentiment, and sometimes purchases as well. And is that something you've seen, the tangible benefits adding to the bottom line or otherwise by delivering this outstanding experience?
Absolutely. I mean, we do, we find that, by prioritizing these things, by getting this strong NPS, we will see loyalty from our customers. So, what we want to do is we want to gain our customers' trust and their loyalty. And, we don't necessarily want them to just book their, summer holiday with us, but, we want them to think of us for their city break and their ski holiday and their cruise. so by really focusing on getting it right for them on the first interaction, we're seeing that repeat custom.
Fantastic. Absolutely wonderful to hear that. Apologies, I know I've asked you a myriad of questions, Karen. You've given thoroughly good, great answers all the way along. I think just some, I suppose if you don't mind, I'd like to ask for some closing thoughts, if you like. What do you think's next? What will change? We talked about this kind of idea of ever changing, expectations. There's new platforms, there's AI, there's all sorts of things being, presented as either challenges or opportunities for brands. What do you see as the next big thing within the digital and social care space?
Oh, it's a really tough question. I mean, I think I can only see customers' expectations continuing to grow in terms of kind of speed and platform coverage that they expect from us. Hopefully, further developments in AI and automation will allow us to kind of respond to that. I think, what we're almost seeing is that customers are almost expecting social to be a bit like a live chat experience. We do see, customers will send us a message and then they'll go, "Hello, are you there?" As if, they expect it to be almost instant. And I can't see that going away. So I think it's going to be how we deal with that. I can only really see the number of platforms that people are using growing. Perhaps it might not be the same ones. I think the jury's out on whether some of the older platforms are gonna sort of continue to cling on. But there's other ones opening all the time. There's Reddit. There's all of the other ones that the younger generation that I don't know about are starting to use, that I'm going to have to upskill myself on. So yeah, a tough question. I don't know if I've really answered that very well, Amy,
Yeah.
but it's a tough one.
I think you have, and obviously no one has a crystal ball, but I think what you've highlighted there are really great answers. Only time will tell. It's very hard to predict too much, I suppose. And I think just lastly, I know where you worked before, which is an enormous UK-based retailer, which obviously international too, to something which I wouldn't say is necessarily a bigger or smaller business, but is much more complicated. What would be your kind of your, I guess, single piece of advice for an organization that's looking to really scale their sort of social care? Obviously, we all know it's fundamentally important. You have to do this. It's not a maybe. But what advice would you give to a brand who's really looking to scale their social care initiative?
Yeah. I think I would, if it's a question of scaling, I think I would say, as you scale, don't forget about the positive interactions, because I think it's easy to prioritize the questions, the queries, the issues. But I think also we see a lot of value in making sure that you're interacting with the volume of kind of neutral and positive comments as well. It can be easy when you're prioritizing, when you're trying to grow, to prioritize sorting out people's issues, which absolutely is a priority. But I think also if you can focus on acknowledging that also huge volume of neutral and positive sentiments, then you're really going to turn those customers into advocates for the brand.
Yeah, I 100% agree. As I've got older, I'm slightly dismissive of just generic engagement rates, and I think I've kind of, it's not exactly a rebrand. I call it participation rate, and actually the dialogue, which is not about necessarily comment on a post, but the dialogue between a brand and its customers and vice versa, very much speaks that idea of participating with the brand. And I totally agree. Of course, you should absolutely address someone if their holiday's been cancelled or whatever, they've lost a suitcase. But at the same time, if someone's celebrating their experience, or even just having a neutral, I totally agree. Engage in the conversation where appropriate. Yeah, I think so.
Absolutely. It's something that's kind of really important to us, and I completely agree with you on the engagement rate. metric. And yeah, we often, as a team, often have conversations about, how do we create our own custom metrics that basically takes out, engagements that don't really sort of tell us anything about what the customer intends to do.
That's right. I agree. There's still a lot of let's call it legacy metrics that actually are meaningless to business, whether it's adding to the bottom line or pushing the kind of standard funnel metrics like awareness and consideration and so on. And I think you're absolutely right to focus on sentiment as one of those kind of examples. It's really important, and be able to compare that with competitors, as I know you do, is equally golden. So, well, thank you, Karen. Is there anything else you'd like to kind of chime in with? All good? Any other kind of comments you want to share with the audience?
I think the only other thing that I would mention, which I guess we potentially haven't really touched on, is just around the sort of reporting capabilities, and just not forgetting about the importance of using tools like dashboards and analytics to really understand. We've talked about kind of the volume of contact and speed in dealing with it, but really understanding like what's driving that contact, what's the sentiment, and kind of defining those early to kind of make sure that you're set up to respond to them.
Yeah, I agree. I know agility is all key within conversations like this. So, well, look, thank you, Karen, for joining Emplifi today. Really lovely to see you again. And back to Susan, please.
Great. Thank you, Karen and Emmy. That was so helpful, and so much great data and great advice. I just want to double down on one thing Karen just said about reporting and focusing there. I want to add in the phrase sharing is caring, because when you take your reports and you share them beyond your social team, share them with your product leadership, share them with your management, share them with the care team, share them with the commerce team, there is data there that they can learn from. Absolutely. And it may help you run better promotions, do better pricing, compete in a stronger way. All of that data is just, it's data gold. So go for it. Sharing is caring. Share those reports. All right, Molly, should we answer a couple of the questions out there?
Yeah, I want to go back a bit to the beginning. And I know we're just past a half hour, so if we don't get to any questions, we can certainly follow up with everybody directly. There was some really good conversation. But back in the beginning, one of the first statistics that Emmy listed out was that data point around 67% of people wanting that human touch. I think as consumers, we all kind of feel that we crave that interaction sometimes, but there's also a balance, right? And I think this data point might need a little bit of context, and I was hoping you could maybe dive into this a bit more so it's not kind of overgeneralized and dig into it.
Yeah, great. And so one of the things Karen also said was, she pairs her AI with people. That is so critical in today's world of AI. You've got to be able to look at the content that you might be sharing with someone, or the care response you might be sharing with someone, and just give it a once over with a human to make sure that, it is the way you want to represent your brand and how you want to come back. I want to give an example of, the 67% of people who prefer a human. You don't need it for everything, right? So here's my example. My husband and I recently bought a hot tub for our backyard. Yep. Official. I'm an old person. That's what you do when you're old. And so I'm in the market for a lot of bathing suits, and you just don't, it's just not easy to find malls and places where you can buy these bathing suits. So I just decided to give it a go online, something I've never done. Obviously, it's a very personal and something you normally try on. Did all my research. They did an excellent job of marketing to me online and remarketing to me online. And so I decided to take the plunge with this one organization. And when I did, the suit arrived and it was too small, even though I really thought I got it right. And so what I contacted them and said, hey, I need to return this. It's too small. Their AI came back and told me, keep it, gift it to somebody else, and for the cost of shipping, we'll send you a new one. Well, I love that business model. First of all, that was amazing. Yeah. Secondly, I gifted it to my friend who gave it to her daughter, who now they have two people who love this brand. So that worked out well for them. And in the end, I didn't need to talk to anybody. That was a really simple exchange, right? And Molly, you probably have like lots of examples of those simple exchanges. It's the more complex ones, the ones that, involve, great sums of money, or the ones that, impact your well-being or whatever, or in the case of TUI, your ability to get from point A to point B. Those are the times when you might need to speak to somebody because it's more urgent, and just a bigger deal. So keep that in mind as you're trying to decide which of these do we try to answer with AI and which of these do we do we funnel to a person to handle.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting in the context of what Karen and Emmy were talking about. Karen coming from TUI, a travel brand, right? Like, I think we are almost coming full circle. Like, we used to, when customer support first started being automated, you're like, all I want to do is talk to a human. And now we're kind of at the point where sometimes when I'm trying to rebook something, I just want simplicity. And I'm like, I just can do this through a machine or online. I don't need to actually talk to a person. So yeah, we've kind of come full circle. So it's definitely interesting to hear your experience, Susan, but also TUI and Karen's as well. So, and that kind of segues naturally into the next question. There was some great conversation going in our chat between Gary and Amy in the audience about that balance. And Karen touched on this, but would love to hear your insight, Susan, on what is the balance between how much you empower your social media team, your marketing team on social channels without overstepping and taking away from the customer care team. What's the balance? There's different channels, there's different profiles, there's a ton of things to consider. So any experience or insights you have on how helping to balance that?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of brands that really get this done right. And the way they distinguish it is just based on surging. So there's two elements to it. One is, the first element is, they will often train their social team on handling the most common customer care questions. That training shouldn't take very long, and maybe you have to refresh it every quarter or every half a year or so, or maybe have a manual for them to work from. But the most common customer questions, them by now, especially if you're an established brand. If you're a brand new brand selling in new markets, like the bathing suit company that I bought from, maybe you answer more, in person at first, and over time you figure out which questions are being asked repeatedly. You find your repeated answer and you automate that. So it's about, one, training those people in the social team. The second is two, about empowering them to be able to answer these questions. Not like you want to be able to understand there was a question and it got answered, so it makes it from your social media platform over to your care team so the ticket can be recorded. You don't want to lose the data on what questions have been asked. That data is critical, because maybe somebody keeps asking the same question over and over again. And if you simply changed your marketing, my bathing suit example, maybe they needed to, give different measurements or different points on the body that you would measure in order for the bathing suit to fit right. And they would learn that because how many people are returning or how many people got that automated AI answer. So you want the data to be there. So no matter who answers the question, one is make sure the data becomes part of your ultimate unified reporting. But then the second is, definitely empower that team to do it. One of the best examples I've seen of that is all the way back in, I think it was 2010 timeframe. You might remember in Europe, there was a big ash cloud that prevented people from traveling. And what the airlines did then is they actually did a flash training on people on how to reticket. So they weren't ticket agents. They were social media managers, but they got a flash training on how to reticket someone. So some of the social media inquiries that were about reticketing were able to be answered by the social media team. So, and then others, of course, went over to the more complicated ones went over to the ticketing team. So again, it comes back to that training. It comes back to that collaboration. And It's a really great growth opportunity for everybody in marketing, I think. And then conversely, for everybody on the care team to work together as one unit. So we love seeing those silos break down. We believe that those silos have largely broken down in many organizations, especially the ones that we work with. So love seeing it. All right, Molly, I think we might be out of time. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's about it. There were some more specifics for Emmy and Karen, so we will definitely come back to those in our follow-up to give any unanswered questions a bit more attention. But we will let everybody get back to their day. But real quick, Susan, I think we had one more question if we wanted to ask folks if they are interested in it. Yeah.
We wanted to make sure and let you know that we have a lot of experts in-house, and we'd love to put those experts next to you and on the phone with you in some capacity. So if you just want to raise your hand and let us know if you would be interested in talking to us. Molly, remind me how we're asking them to do that.
I just launched a survey. There is an area if they're interested in any follow-up, as you said, Susan, with one of our social media and care experts, and or any other feedback that they want to leave with us, they can do that via the survey, or feel free to drop it in the chat too, and we'll see it there as well.
Great. Yep. And if you put your name there, we will be in touch, and we'll get you. Sometimes we're helping brands with brief audit reports. Sometimes we're showing them their data live. Sometimes we're just connecting them with the expert that can solve the issue they have at hand. So definitely let us know. We'd love to hear from you. Awesome. Yep. Molly and this entire team, thank you so much. Karen and Emmy, you are amazing people and getting the job done. And it's so great to see. All right. Tune in next time, guys. We're excited.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you next week for the next part 2. Thanks so much.
Bye.